Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we have an exciting episode. We have updates from Tesla on almost every single vehicle in the lineup. So we're going to go through exactly what has changed because there's a lot here to keep track of. So Tesla normally doesn't make these broad sweeping changes across the lineup. They sort of just update each vehicle as they have changes to make. This then is pretty unique for Tesla, and it does seem like they're making these changes right at the same time that they're changing the model year. So even though on Tesla's website they don't necessarily designate what model year the vehicle is, the vehicle identification number does still indicate that. And from those VINs, we've been able to see that Tesla has just now started producing those 2021 model year vehicles over the last couple of weeks. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but let's get right into the changes here. Predominantly, the changes have come to the Model 3, but again, there are updates to all the vehicles, which I've recapped in a chart here if you are watching on video. We'll go out of the traditional order here of S3XY and switch it up. We'll start with the Model 3. So the Standard Range Plus originally had a 250-mile range. That has now been increased by 13 miles to 263. The long-range version saw the most significant bump for the Model 3, going from 322 miles before, now to 353 miles of range, and the performance jumped up by 16 miles from 299 miles before, now to 315. For the Standard Range Plus and the Performance, that's about a 5% increase in range, but for the long range, it's actually about 9.5%. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we don't know what is driving that significant variance between the long-range all-wheel drive and the other two trims. We're just going to have to wait and see once these actually start being delivered to customers. Aside from the range, the long-range and performance versions are now quicker, 0 to 60. The long-range non-performance has been updated from 4.4 seconds before to 4.2 seconds now, and the performance has gone from 3.2 seconds 0 to 60 down to 3.1. As for other changes, we have talked about quite a few of these earlier this week, but the big one here is the heat pump. I was actually able to confirm that the new version of the Model 3 does have the heat pump. This was just from one source at Tesla, so it is possible that that source was misinformed, but from my knowledge, the Model 3 now does have the heat pump like the Model Y. That should improve the efficiency, especially in colder climates. We also know that the Model 3 has now been updated from chrome to have black trim instead, a power trunk. There is a new steering wheel. Electrek is saying that the steering wheel is heated. I have not seen that confirmed anywhere else though, so I think that's a question mark at this point in time. There's new wheel updates, so the Aero wheels and the Sport wheels have been updated to a new look, and then the Performance Model 3 has been updated to the Uber turbine wheels that are currently on the Model Y, though on the Model 3, they're an inch smaller at just 20 inches. Rounding things out are, I believe, updated mirrors, though I think this happened earlier, sometime around September, to add a heating element to the side mirrors. And then I believe there's also now an auto-dimming rear view mirror for the Model 3. There's been updates made to the windows, apparently for better soundproofing, and then of course the updated center console. So the fingerprint trap that was the piano black glossy console is no more, at least for the Model 3. It does still remain on the Model Y. So speaking of the Model Y, let's move on to the updates there. These are just range focused. So the long-range Model Y has improved by 10 miles from a previous EPA rating of 316 miles to a new rating of 326 miles, 3% increase there. And then the Performance Model Y has gone from 291 miles up to 303. So 12 miles there, or an additional 4%. We'll come back to that for a little bit more analysis, but just to round things out, for the Model S, the long-range range actually stayed the same at 402 miles, so no change there, but the performance had a significant increase from 348 miles before up to 387, 39 miles incremental, or 11.2%. Of course, the other big news on the Model S this week has been the price cut, so the long range has been reduced by $5,500, while the performance reduced by $3,000. As for the X, no price cut here, so there is a pretty big spread now between the S and the X, but the long range version did see a range increase, as we had talked about earlier this week when we had seen that Moroni sticker from a new delivery. It's gone from 351 miles before, now up by 20 miles to 371, about a 6% increase, and then the performance seeing a similar level of increase to the Performance Model S from 305 before, now up to 341, about a 12% increase, or 36 miles. So to the best of my knowledge, that captures all the changes across the entire lineup, but of course, as these vehicles start to be delivered, we may still uncover some other minor changes. But to summarize all this, if we look at the average here, across the entire lineup, not using any weighting by sales or anything like that, just straight up across the board, previously Tesla's average range was 320 miles per vehicle, now it's 340, so a 20-mile increase for the average vehicle Tesla sells, or about 6%. So how is Tesla able to achieve all of this? Well, back in July we had heard that Panasonic had already developed technology that had resulted in a more than 5% increase in energy density on Tesla's 2170 battery cells, and Reuters had reported that they would, quote, start converting lines at Giga Nevada from September. So I think now we're mid-October, we're starting to see the results of those updates in the lineup. And we're also seeing improvements in S and X, and those would use the 18650s from Japan, not the 2170s from Giga Nevada. But if Panasonic was able to improve the 2170s, well, they were probably able to improve the 18650s as well. I think it's tough to find another explanation for the roughly 6% increase in the Model X range other than updated cells, but the confusing part is that 0% increase on the long-range Model S. Remember though, when the Model S increased from somewhere around 380 miles up to that 402 rating, the Model X didn't actually change at all. So really it's just catching up with the previous Model S updates. So I do wonder if maybe Panasonic had been testing an earlier version of that new battery cell with the 5% energy density increase in just the Model S, but then it wouldn't explain why the performance model, which would presumably have the same pack as the long range, is seeing a similar increase on the Model S here as the Model X. So I think no matter where we slice this equation, there's something that's confusing, which my intuition says is likely due to some software rather than hardware. I think Tesla probably just did not update one of these things before, whether that was the Model X long range version or the ranges on these performance. I don't know, but it seems like something just isn't quite fitting from a hardware perspective on those vehicles. And then we kind of get into that same situation now again with the Model 3, where we're seeing that 10% increase on the long range, but only a 5% increase on the Standard Range Plus and the Performance. And again, the long range and the Performance should really have that same battery pack, and I can't imagine they both don't have the heat pump, same with the Standard Range, so it's unclear what is causing that variance for the all-wheel drive long range compared to those other versions. Somehow the Model Y actually looks like the simplest update here. We see a 3% improvement on the long range non-performance, a 4% improvement on the performance, so that could be explained by a new cell. But then maybe you're looking at the heat pump only giving 1 to 2% improvement for the Model 3 standard range and performance, and that doesn't add up. So it's all very confusing. I would love to have your help. I feel like the more I talk about this, the more I get confused. So let me know what your take on all this is in the comments. I think we can just safely sum it up by saying Tesla has improved the lineup today. I think this is going to pull a lot of people off the fence that have maybe been waiting for an update. And just like we talked about with the Model S, I think this is going to basically secure the demand required for this quarter, especially for the S, the 3, and the X, which, depending on battery constraints, should seem to have at least a little bit of extra production capacity. So again, let me know your thoughts. Just a quick scheduling update here to close it out. The next episode will be the earnings preview episode most likely. I'm not sure exactly when I will complete all the work I need to do for that, so I'm hoping that episode will come out later on Monday, but it might push into Tuesday if that takes me a little bit longer, but I will get that out as soon as I can. So that's why I recommend subscribing, signing up for notifications, and make sure you're following me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. But that'll do it for today and for the week, and I'll see you early next week for earnings week. Thank you.